We cannot hold a dream up as sacrosanct just because. When a dream becomes a tool of making society demonstrably worse, it too must be taken to task. A few months ago, I was on the downtown 1 train in New York City where I live. Somewhere around 110th Street Station, a young man got on the train. He had all the hallmarks of a summer tourist: his casual clothes, his duffel bag, and his handful of pamphlets and printouts. He was accompanied by another young man, and they spoke to each other in English accents. So that all made sense in my mind. New York City is a tourist city, and there's a hostel nearby to that train stop. Business as usual for 8 a.m. on the 1 train, alongside people commuting to work, getting off at 59th Street, or transferring to the express train at 96th Street. Nothing remarkable. What blew my mind was the shirt this young man was wearing, a well-worn off-white t-shirt bearing the face of a familiar cartoon beaver. This apparel was merchandise from Buc-ee's. Despite the fact that there are no Buc-ee's within hundreds of miles, here was its insignia, clear as day. Buc-ee's is big business, literally. The chain was founded in Texas in 1982 and is headquartered in Texas to this day. The general gimmick of Buc-ee's is that their establishments are physically spacious, that is to say, huge. They could either be considered a mega-sized convenience store with gas pumps, or a gas station with an indoor version of a downtown strip featuring all the necessary amenities: hot food, road trip snacks, merchandise, and of course, clean bathrooms. The largest Buc-ee's retail location is located in Luling, Texas. The Luling store has over 100 gas pumps and expands over a physical area totaling over 75,000 square feet. Truly, if you've never been inside a Buc-ee's, it's hard to conceptualize just how big their average retail location really is. When I had my one and so far only Buc-ee's experience at their location in Sevierville, Tennessee, I was simultaneously impressed and overwhelmed. The store there was typical in its expansiveness, and it was also packed. Now, the bathrooms were indeed clean. However, navigating the rest of the store consisted of awkward shuffling around throngs of people. It felt more like Coachella than a rest stop. Amidst all the revelers inside, I got my hot coffee and ranch snack mix and promptly got the hell out of there. If you're not familiar with American gas station culture, it's important to understand that they tend to have loyal followings. As a young child, I remember my own mother being very intentional about where she got her gas. She never went to Exxon stations, she said, in protest of the Exxon Valdez oil spill which occurred in 1989. This incident spilled over 10 million gallons of crude oil and contaminated hundreds of miles of coastline in southern Alaska. Other family members were loyal to their own particular brands of gas, saying things like, "Oh, I don't go to that gas station because they don't have good gas." This kind of consumerism is subjective rather than obliquely conscious. It doesn't have quite the same ring as Amnesty International calling for a boycott of Shell due to its pollution activity in Nigeria, or the Yes Men calling for Dow Chemical to be held accountable for the Bhopal environmental disaster in India. In any case, Buc-ee's is retaining its audience. And Buc-ee's is in an interesting pocket of American car culture and consumerism because whatever they're doing, it's clearly working. I'd say the general sentiment from your average American about Buc-ee's is favorable. A 2023 survey by Pay Less Power found that consumers held Buc-ee's in the number 2 spot for their preferred gas station, second only to Costco. Even their trademark beaver is shorthand for something optimistic, a wistful symbol at the crossroads of big box stores and the American open road. So much so, in fact, that the company has been fiercely protective of that beaver in instances where the image of the beaver is appropriated or approximated. In a certain light, Buc-ee's is an innovative operation. Unlike many other gas stations with similar amenities, Buc-ee's does not offer diesel for trucks, therefore removing it from the category of a truck stop. In that way, it's the first of its kind to exclusively cater to motorists. The novelty of its retail location size and the store's isolation from the perceived ills of urban society render it almost like a suburban mall, and in a positive way for its consumer base. It's not exactly a one-stop shop, but it does what it does extremely well, and it's built a strong following as a result. And this positive public image has yet to be interrupted by scandal. Imagine my surprise then, when this article came across my desk a little while back. The article is entitled, New Report Offers a Look at the Water Demand of Buc-ee's Travel Centers. It was written by staff reporter Andrea Guzman for Cron.com, a Houston-based publication. The article summarizes an ongoing conflict regarding the potential building of a Buc-ee's location in Palmer Lake, Colorado. For context, Palmer Lake is located along Interstate 25 on the main highway route between Denver and Colorado Springs, being situated roughly 25 miles north of Colorado Springs itself. A location such as this would make perfect business sense for people making long-distance drives across the Front Range, such as from Denver to Albuquerque or from Boulder to Taos. And yet, the community of Palmer Lake is putting up a fight. According to Guzman, quote, the town of Palmer Lake in Colorado released reports this week on the fiscal and water impact of Buc-ee's. According to the Colorado Springs Gazette, the first report found that Buc-ee's would generate about $31.8 million in revenue minus gas sales in its first full year of operation, corresponding to about $955,000 in revenue for the town. But it would also require much more water consumption in a place that draws its supply currently from 2 wells and surface resources. The average day demand would be 37,300 gallons, bringing an estimated 19% increase in overall water demand. Now, it might be hard to visualize what 37,300 gallons of water really is. According to an infographic associated with the article, that amount of water consumed in one day is equivalent to what the average Colorado Springs household would consume in 9.5 months. I find this interesting because this particular line of defense is topical. There's been similar criticism of ChatGPT in particular. Over the past year, since ChatGPT has gained prominence in society, environmentalists have brought attention to the fact that the generative AI technology used by ChatGPT drains immense amounts of water for the cooling of its physical infrastructure. In a place like Colorado, which is considered to be fairly liberal, this argument about water conservation would go pretty far on its own. That being said, the Palmer Lake community seems adamant against the construction of a new Buc-ee's for more extensive reasons. In January of this year, a bus was spotted driving around Palmer Lake bearing a banner for a website called StopBuc-ee's.com. This website appears to be a project of a local group called Tri-Lakes Preservation Inc. A local resident affiliated with the group stated this to Cron.com. You have a business model that isn't for the local people. The money that's coming in is coming from people who are traveling through, down I-25, so they're not concerned about the well-being of this ecosystem. This sentiment echoes the concern of the water consumption angle and also extends to things like potential increases in airborne gas particles, landfill trash, and litter. While it's true that the town is projected to gain about $955,000 in revenue from the first year's operations, this figure may not hold up to the potential environmental drawbacks and costs associated with those. This story also gets more intense because the mayor of Palmer Lake, Glant Havner, resigned in June 2025. His resignation apparently stemmed from the ongoing move to halt the Buc-ee's, the bad behavior being Havner exchanging inflammatory statements about local residents in a Signal chat. Amidst this change in continuity, Buc-ee's may be able to prevail after all. The resistance against new Buc-ee's locations is rooted in more than just simple American NIMBYism. A similar pushback is ongoing in Port Charlotte, Florida, and Oak Creek, Wisconsin, with relation to planned Buc-ee's retail locations there. Perhaps the most vigilant resistance to Buc-ee's development is that of the planned new location in Mabin, North Carolina. Mabin is located along Interstate 40 between the cities of Durham and Greensboro. You might encounter Mabin at the halfway point on a drive from Virginia Beach to Asheville, North Carolina, for example. The site proposal for the Mabin location sparked an entire environmental report to be commissioned by the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network in conjunction with 7 Directions of Service. 7 Directions is an indigenous-led organization with an environmental justice and indigenous sovereignty organizational mission. This environmental report is quite damningly named Buc-ee's Burden: How Mega Gas Stations Hurt Community Health and Wealth. I'll link the full report in the description. The report delves into a few different sections related to Buc-ee's impact on environmental determinants of health and local community economics, in addition to the political contributions of Buc-ee's founders Arch Beaver Applin III and Don Wasek. Let's be clear in saying that most retail companies in the United States have similar potential for criticism. We are not so far away from the aughties discourse of Walmart's negative impact on locally owned businesses, or the 2010s calls for boycotts of companies like Urban Outfitters and Chick-fil-A for their corporate giving patterns. I think any company with the size and reach of Buc-ee's opens itself up to criticism because the relevant facts are often there in plain sight. That said, let's get into the particular points of dispute raised by the Buc-ee's Burden report. Page 1 of the report states, quote, "These expansive sites have been welcomed in some cases by local leaders in search of new sources of jobs jobs, and cheered by Buc-ee's fan base. The store's strong branding has a cult-like following, complete with subreddits and Facebook groups. But as Buc-ee's, which was started in Texas in 1982, embarks on a massive expansion project, an opposition movement has arisen that focuses on both local and global effects of the mega gas station phenomenon. Buc-ee's Mabin proposal has sparked a robust public debate, with critics and supporters speaking for nearly 9 hours before the city council vote, and it's gotten coverage in the local and regional media. But largely overlooked in the media coverage of the Buc-ee's proposal to date are the health and economic consequences of putting such a large number of gasoline pumps in one place. Page 2 gives a condensed list of the problems that the report identifies in tandem with opening a Buc-ee's location. This includes toxic gas vapor air pollution, leaks from gas tanks which necessitate taxpayer-funded cleanups, low wages for employees, the aforementioned donations by the founders of Buc-ee's, as well as the decrease in property values for homeowners who live in the surrounding area. Again, I'll link the PDF of the full report in the description and also go over some key findings here. A key component of the environmental health impact of a gas station is the proliferation of BTEX chemicals. BTEX is an acronym consisting of benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylene. While an average gas station with perhaps 8 to 10 gas pumps also carries the risk of exposure to these chemicals, a Buc-ee's location with dozens or over 100 pumps would increase the risk substantially. These chemicals pose a risk when inhaled, when allowed to lay stagnant on a surface, or when they leak into groundwater from the underground storage tanks. Notably, the report asserts people of color in the United States are more likely to live near gas stations and thus be affected by these risk factors. This constitutes what is referred to as environmental racism. While Buc-ee's is not unique in its ability to contribute to it, again, the sheer volume of gasoline that flows in and out of the retail locations poses an increased risk. Page 12 of the Buc-ee's Burden Report lists the potential health risks thus. Quote, benzene exposure through vapors or in drinking water has been associated with childhood leukemia and, in adults, lung cancer, acute myeloid leukemia, acute lymphocytic leukemia, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and other blood-related cancers such as multiple myeloma and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, according to the American Cancer Society and the CDC. Another component of the Buc-ee's controversy is the promise of job creation and the potential wages associated with those jobs. Page 14 asserts the following. Buc-ee's claims its Mabin location will bring 225 full-time jobs to the region, with $15 an hour starting wages, benefits, and opportunities for advancement. This $15 an hour minimum is touted as an accomplishment because it is above what some retailers pay. But the living wage calculation for Alamance County, according to MIT's living wage calculator, is a minimum of $20.19 an hour, or an annual income around $42,000 for one adult with no children. And for a single adult with 3 children, Buc-ee's wages are described as poverty wages. A true living wage would be closer to $50 an hour. This does not even take into account the cost of getting to Buc-ee's by car from a surrounding community. There is essentially no public transit to get to the proposed location off the interstate. The report also cites a low satisfaction rating of Buc-ee's employees. When I was writing this script, I texted my friend in Belgium and asked if he had ever heard of Buc-ee's. He literally replied, "I heard they were not good for employees." Anecdotal evidence as this is, it does reveal something about what's going on here on this side of the pond. Also from page 14, quote, the company has a notoriously high turnover rate and a very strict dress code, and is known for restricting employee breaks and firing people over minor instances of being late. Buc-ee's also asks employees to sign contracts that a Texas court in 2017 likened to indentured servitude. Buc-ee's requires some employees who leave the company in under 5 years to pay back their training wages, essentially charging them for leaving the company and entrapping them in the job. Because Buc-ee's employees are generally considered to be quote-unquote unskilled labor, you can imagine the economic class of people who are maligned by these practices. Finally, on page 19, the report asserts some unfortunate claims about the donations made by co-founders Beaver and Don Wasik. Aside from your run-of-the-mill donations to Republican politicians, the report asserts this claim as well. Quote, their conservative agenda connects them to outright white supremacists. According to Open Secrets, Wasik has contributed $100,000 to an uber-conservative PAC called Texans United for a Conservative Majority, which was started by West Texas oil billionaires Tim Dunn and Ferris Wilkes after they were tied to white supremacists. That PAC is so far to the right that it went after Texas House Republicans who voted to impeach Attorney General Ken Paxton over accusations of inappropriate favors to donors, interference in federal investigations, and retaliation against whistleblowers. So we get the picture asserted by this report. The charming gas station, which is known for roadside brisket sliders and clean bathrooms, advertised by a smiling cartoon character, is not for the people. Surprise, surprise. The major issue with even talking about this is that the average Buc-ee's consumer probably does not care at all about any of the points raised by the Buc-ee's Burden report. This is not a company that has any interest in courting a liberal or left-leaning audience. Moreover, it's quite easy to avoid spending your money at Buc-ee's. In any given location, you can just drive another 5 to 10 miles and patronize a different gas station or truck stop. This is why I stated earlier that Buc-ee's is innovative. It may not be curing cancer or developing life-changing prosthetics, but it is innovating in the capitalist sense of the word, meaning that it's finding a previously uncorralled audience and tailoring itself to profit from that demographic. In that way, Buc-ee's is the American dream. More than just a successful business, Buc-ee's is a shining symbol of America's cultural values all distilled into one hyper-efficient spirit. In the 40 or so years since Buc-ee's was founded, the United States has gone through some transformations. We've cycled through Democratic and Republican regimes, income and wealth inequality has worsened immensely, self-proclaimed culture wars have been fought, and the nation is now more digitally connected than ever before. And yet, some things never changed. The United States is still by and large a car-dependent nation. Our society has not really wavered in its love of consumerism in any demographic. We still cling in part to the cultural myth that hard work breeds material rewards, the prosperity gospel. At the time of the recording of this video, we're collectively experiencing what many have dubbed a return to conservative values. In that light, the success of a company founded by conservatives, catering largely to conservatives, and building itself off of the very ideals that conservatives would defend is really not that remarkable. In the book The Culture Code, former advertising executive Clotaire Raphael emphasizes the role of dreams and dreaming in American culture. It's important to note that Raphael is a Frenchman, so this is his perception as a European who went on to become a naturalized American. The Culture Code is his memoir about the advertising work he did for global brands. Raphael identifies dreams as a key ideological notion that pertains to doing business in America as well as to politics and culture overall. He says, quote, "Dreams have driven this culture from its earliest days. The dream of explorers discovering the New World. The dream of pioneers opening the West. The dream of the Founding Fathers imagining a new form of union. The dream of entrepreneurs forging the Industrial Revolution. The dream of immigrants coming to a land of hope. The dream of a new group of explorers landing safely on the moon. Our Constitution is the expression of a dream for a better society. We created Hollywood and Disneyland and the internet to project our dreams out into the world. We are the product of dreams, and we are the makers of dreams." He continues, "Our notion of abundance is a dream. It is the dream of limitless opportunity that we believe is synonymous with being American. Our need for constant movement is the expression of a dream in which we can always do more, always create and accomplish. Even our cultural adolescence is a dream. We want to believe we are forever young and that we never truly have to grow up." He concludes, "It is America's mission to provide dreams to humanity." What strikes me about this passage from the Culture Code is that it's both hitting at something true while also coming off as incredibly naive. I certainly don't disagree that dreams and dreaming are woven into the fabric of the American mentality, but the case studies cited here are just not it. The quote, "explorers discovering the New World were profit motivated and uniquely cruel, even to the extent that contemporary people in Europe were like, you're doing too much." The Founding Fathers may have been imagining a quote, "new form of union that was different from what existed at the time, but this was a dream for them only as landed white men, and not a dream for humanity." The quote, "entrepreneurs forging the Industrial Revolution brought about the Gilded Age, which many now say we are in a second iteration of." In this claim, Raphael is getting at something and also losing a lot in the process. We cannot venerate the idea of a dream when so many of these so-called dreams are just fantasies of exerting undue power. We cannot hold a dream up as sacrosanct just because. When a dream becomes a tool of making society demonstrably worse, it too must be taken to task. The rise of Buc-ee's from regional wonder to national cultural icon is especially cutting given that the 2010s were marked by the rise in the movement against fossil fuel dependence. In the span of my undergraduate coursework, I watched as my campus's movement to divest from fossil fuels bloomed seemingly from nothing. I was a student group leader for 2 years. Around that time, my school's divestment student group coalesced into a very active and visible contingent on campus. A 2014 article in The Guardian noted that, by that time, 13 American colleges had divested their endowments from fossil fuel related investments, including Stanford. Around 24 more would follow suit by the close of the decade. Even into 2020, the movement was scoring more victories on campuses. Cornell University voted to divest in May 2020, and the University of Washington voted in 2022 to divest their investments by 2027. Throughout the 2010s, we also saw reasonably liberal cities announce the divestment of their municipal portfolios from fossil fuels. Berkeley in 2013, Washington, D.C. in 2017, and Denver in 2019, to name a few. This initial movement was largely centered around the environmentalist website 350.org, which rolled out their campus divestment campaign in 2012. And the divestment movement was relatively well sustained throughout the 2010s. However, a new group emerged in 2018 that came to reshape the movement significantly. That being XR, Extinction Rebellion. Extinction Rebellion came into existence in 2018 in the United Kingdom. The group is acknowledged to have 3 co-founders, Gail Bradbrook, Simon Bramwell, and Roger Hallam. Hallam in particular is associated with the group due to his regular media appearances and participation in civil disobedience. XR can be variously described as a grassroots activist organization or an environmental pressure group. Their positioning is that climate change is going to bring about the end of humanity much sooner than we'd like to think, and therefore, urgent action is necessary. The pathos of XR takes the form of routine and regular acts of civil disobedience, protest, and demonstrations. Many people who join XR are joining with the oblique expectation that they will participate in these actions, get arrested, and potentially face legal consequences. From late 2018 into the present day, they have been visible and vocal members of the ongoing conversations related to climate change and environmentalism. XR's platform is somewhat intentionally vague. Their website lists 10 organizing values, including that they operate non-violently and in a decentralized fashion. However, you won't find a page specifically related to any particular fossil fuel campaign, even if that's within their organizing catchment. Their website does list 86 local chapters in the United States, representing 36 of the 50 states. I remember hearing about XR in around 2018 or 2019. By 2020, it seemed like a lot of the people I knew who had initially gotten involved had kind of burnt out. Now, this is not really unique to XR, and I can imagine that many in my circle shifted by mid-2020 to pandemic relief mutual aid and racial justice solidarity as their primary cause. Nevertheless, XR's tight-knit structure and revolutionary ethos has attracted some negative attention, with some, in good faith or bad, labeling them a cult. I bring them up to say that seeing the pulse of culture go from divest from fossil fuels 10 years ago to OMG, this gas station is my best friend now is wild. When it comes to Buc-ee's, it's not even like this gas station is really doing that much to cultivate this air. Rather, Buc-ee's symbolizes something monumental to people, something fundamentally and unmistakably American. This is perhaps why you have foreign tourists making a point to visit a Buc-ee's during their trips to the States. It's almost as if Times Square is whack and chuggy compared to the novelty of your average roadside Buc-ee's. And arguably, I'd say that's correct. Buc-ee's has found its place in American culture. And once you're there, it's extremely difficult to be usurped. Alright folks, that's the video. Thanks again for making it this far. Is Buc-ee's part of your American dream? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, if you're an environmental justice activist and you have resources to share around fossil fuel divestment, feel free to drop those in the comments below as well. This is Hassan with the Diaspora Gothic channel. Remember to stay connected, stay rooted, and stay dramatic. Bye!